The ill-appealing sight of a grey cloud, the nasty smell of something burning, the disgusting taste of tar. This is smoking, and it's an experience most of us have had, either first or second hand. Smoking as a practice has been used by humans since antiquity, though nowadays something like vaping is a little bit more common, especially among the youngs. But let's talk about these unhealthy habits and what they bring to the table. First, let's talk about the act of smoking itself. Smoking involves the use of a burning agent and a flame to produce smoke, which travels through the mouth, the pharynx, the larynx, and finally the lungs. Because the smoke contains primarily carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, and even some nitrogen oxide, it irritates the bronchi. These compounds, along with many other found in cigarettes and vapes, contribute to the toxicity and carcinogenicity of the smoke. Long-term exposure to all of these agents has been shown in scientific literature to cause lung cancer, chronic cough, decreased oxygen saturation in the lungs, and a variety of other side effects. As you can imagine, damaging the lungs leads to a reduced amount of oxygen that we absorb and therefore we use in our bodies. Oxygen, being the primary way we produce energy in our body, is required for us to survive and furthermore to function in full capacity, provided our respiratory system as a whole works in an optimum manner. This is why athletes are prohibited by their coaches from smoking, because it will decrease their athletic performance and worsen their mentality towards training. Moreover, tobacco smoke contains nicotine, tar, arsenic, benzene, and formaldehyde. Nicotine is probably the most well-known ingredient in this list. Nicotine is a stimulant and it's the second most addictive substance in the world, right behind heroin. When it comes down to it, smoking also changes reward circuits in the prefrontal cortex of our brain. That's thanks to nicotine, of course. Nicotine, just like any other drug we use in our society, slowly makes us dependent upon it. These changes are especially dangerous for young people whose brain is still developing. If you start smoking, you're irreversibly changing the way your brain works. That should be enough for you to reconsider smoking. It's important to clarify that clean forms of nicotine are licensed to help smokers quit. These are much safer than smoking, as they are nicotine only and don't have the additives or toxic chemicals, and are proven to be safe and effective when it comes to helping smokers and withdrawal symptoms. Carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas which takes the place of oxygen in the blood. It does so by displacing it from hemoglobin, which binds it covalently to transport it throughout our body. This forces our heart to work much harder and stops your lungs from working properly. So, your cells and tissues will be prevented from getting the oxygen they need. This can lead to cardiovascular disease, including stroke and heart failure. Furthermore, women who smoke during pregnancy pass carbon monoxide to the fetus, preventing it from getting the oxygen it needs. Tar is the sticky brown/black substance that stains smokers' teeth and fingers a yellow-brown color. It contains cancer-causing particles and carcinogens. Tar damages your lungs by narrowing the small tubes called bronchioles that absorb oxygen in our lungs. It also damages the small hairs called cilia that help us protect the lung from dirt and infection. Tar damages tooth enamel and gums, as well as the olfactory epithelium on our nose. It also destroys the alveoli in the lung. This can lead to a range of lung disease such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and emphysema. As for arsenic and nickel, all you need to know is that they cause cancer by damaging DNA reparation. Now, with all that being said, let's compare cigarette smoking to other forms of smoking like vaping and hookah. Vaping versus cigarettes. Vaping is the inhalation of vapor created by an electronic cigarette. We used to believe that the heating of the substances inside the e-cigarettes made a difference compared to burning of the substances in normal cigarettes. However, we now know that it makes little difference. You see, vaping still poses many of the health risks of cigarette smoking, like risk for cardiovascular disease, but the difference is that some of these risks are reduced in comparison to those of cigarette smoking. For example, vaping does reduce the amount of exposure you get to tar. However, we should keep in mind the limitations of our current knowledge about vaping, since we do not have any long-term cohort studies as of yet. As a result, the long-term results of vaping remain unknown. Vapes have been linked, however, in small-scale studies to tooth decay, mouth cancer, halitosis, and pharyngeal cancer. It is messed up to think that even though e-cigarettes were supposedly created to help smokers quit smoking, they are now basically the gateway to to smoking for young people and children, or people who were not smokers themselves in the first place. This is where all of these things like colorful boxes and fruity flavors come in place. Those seem to pull young, naive, non-smokers in. Regarding the nicotine content of vapes, yes, it's true that they contain a smaller dose of nicotine inside of them. However, that smaller dose still can make people depend upon it, change brain plasticity and the way the brain chemistry works. It is also interesting to note that nicotine replacement therapy and drugs are more researched than vapes in regard to helping people quit smoking. Regarding the disposable vapes we see nowadays in many kiosks, these ones, the disposable vapes, have more than 40 times the amount of nicotine that regular cigarettes have, and in some countries they are not even that heavily regulated, allowing for young people to get their hands on them and start vaping, allowing them a head start into an early addiction. Now let's look at hookah or shisha compared to smoking cigarettes. While many hookah smokers may think this practice is less harmful than smoking cigarettes, hookah smoking has many of the same health risks as cigarette smoking. The water filtering of shisha does nothing. Therefore, shisha is at least as bad as cigarettes in terms of exposure to substances like tar and other carcinogens like carbon monoxide. The tobacco in hookah is exposed to high heat from burning charcoal, and the smoke is at least as toxic as cigarette smoke. Because of the way hookah is used, smokers may absorb more of the toxic substances found in cigarettes than the cigarette smokers do. Furthermore, we should remind ourselves that shisha puts others at second-hand smoking, and also since people are exchanging this metal pipe between them, even though they use a different kind of mouthpiece between each other, this still puts people at a small risk of transmitting many different pathogens that live inside the oral cavity. In comparison to cigarettes, one puff shisha could be theoretically equivalent to one whole cigarette smoked. As far as other health risks in hookah tobacco and smoke contain some toxic agents that cause clogging of the arteries and thus can lead to early cardiovascular disease. Hookah smokers may be at risk for some of the same disease as cigarette smokers. These include oral cancer, lung cancer, stomach cancer, cancer of the esophagus, reduced lung function, decreased fertility, and erectile dysfunction. In conclusion, we see that no matter what kind of device you use to smoke a piece of tobacco or something else, the detrimental effects in our health still remain there. It doesn't matter if the substance goes through some kind of quote-unquote filter, if it's heated up rather than burned, it is still very harmful. And it's harmful in so many ways. It harms you both short-term and long-term. It damages both your cardiovascular system and your respiratory system. It damages both the body and the mind. So please keep all of these things we've talked about today in mind and hopefully you will be able to make more educated decisions and help others understand the dangers they put themselves through when smoking.